Yeah.
So it was a game to it was a game to forget for Bremen, and hopefully they can kind of maybe just kind of just regroup and hopefully salvage something from the season because I've seen a lot of Bremen fans online. There's quite a few of them we work with, and a lot of them
Mm,
just are not happy with Ole Werner. A lot of them weren't entirely happy with him when they were playing well because the way that he didn't give game time to young players and things like that.
mm.
He's quite stubborn with his choices of who to play. And it'll be really interesting to see what they do going forward because they've got Wolfsburg next, then Leverkusen, then Gladbach
Yeah.
in the
Oh, yeah.
Bundesliga. So I think Werner's in for probably a very tricky March.
I mean, the positives here too, though. I mean, it's 23 matches played in the Bundesliga. Um, they're on 30 points, right? And it's been, you say for 40, but the reality is really 38. They have 11 games to get 38 points. And you probably won't need 38 points this year to stay in the league. They're 15 points ahead of the drop zone. And as good as they have been at times, the reality of Werder Bremen too is that they're still a club recovering from their relegation a few years ago, right? So as you mentioned, it's a very thin squad. We talked about it during our transfer shows. There isn't that much depth in it. They did gamble a lot with their transfers in recent years. I mean, one example is Naby Keita that they brought in, and they hope maybe this is a bet that can pay off. It didn't. It could have. You never know. Maybe it would have paid off. It didn't. Burki is another one where you thought, okay, maybe Burke becomes a player that we can really use, and he has his moments, but he never really showed the potential that made him a Leipzig signing a few years ago, right? So that's the sort of place so that they're in at the moment as a club, is they're still recovering from the financial disaster that was COVID and then relegation to the second division, right? They're not the Werder Bremen of the 2010s where they were the second richest team in Germany. They don't have the economic backing that some of the other big city clubs have in German football. And so, that's also why this Pokal exit hurts. There's actually a lot of money in going deep in the DFB Pokal. That's why so many of the big clubs in German football take it so serious. And that's also why for lower division teams, like when I did this big story on Kaiserslautern last year. I went to Kaiserslautern and talked to a lot of people for them. That money that they earned in the German Cup was life-saving for them as a club, right? Because all of a sudden they were on another 5, 6 extra million euros, and they are already a team that has really high attendance numbers, right? So that was money that they did not calculate with, and really helped them to balance the books. And so for a club like Werder Bremen, that extra 4 or 5 million euros can go a long way. And so this is probably what hurts them the most by missing out the semi-final is the financials. And then you have the flip side of that, Arminia Bielefeld. I mean, for them, that is invaluable. Even just that one extra game, and as a third division team, they will be hosting, right? So, I mean, that is enormous for them.
Yeah, it's huge. It's, as you said, it's life changing for a club who obviously were not long ago, top flight or top flight adjacent in that regard.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it's huge for Bielefeld, and it would have been a huge sum for Werder Bremen, who obviously don't have European football. And I think that's actually a really important point. Actually, that this isn't a team that, or it's not your dad's Werder Bremen side.
Yeah.
It's a team that has had to go through the ringer of relegation and more or less rebuild itself from the ground up. And but it still obviously has a very, very, you know, strong fan base that remembers
Mm.
challenges for Bundesliga titles, remembers playing in Europe, remembers having, top class players. Um, but just to kind of put it into perspective, this is a club that spent 7 million euros in the transfer window this season.
Mm.
And I've actually got in front of me the value or the cost of the squad based on transfer fees. This squad cost 32 million euros. That's it. That's the total price. And it's
Mm.
actually the one, two, three, four, five. It's the sixth cheapest squad in the Bundesliga this season. So it's below Augsburg, it's below Union Berlin, it's below Freiburg, below Gladbach, Hoffenheim, clubs like that. Only just above Mainz. Now, of course, Mainz are doing very well, so fair play to them. But it's Mainz are the only team like that you would consider like a regular Bundesliga side that have a cheaper squad than Werder Bremen. Below that is Kiel, is Heidenheim, is St. Pauli, it is Bochum.
Mm,
So we're talking about a club here that, yes, historically speaking, are, a big club in German football, but financially speaking, are still probably in the fifth or sixth bottom when it comes to budgets. And to say that, last season they finished with 42 points, they're sitting on 30. They might not get to 42, but they'll probably get somewhere thereabouts. They'll probably pick up maybe like another 7, 8 points before the end of the season. And I think that's good enough, And as you said, they're not going to get relegated. And it's just, and that, unfortunately, fans might not be happy about that, but
yeah,
that's just the reality of it. And yeah, maybe that doesn't really matter a night like tonight where they should have beaten Bielefeld. Obviously they should be in Bielefeld, and that's on Ole Werner and those players. But as you said, maybe you just have to kind of, when there's kind of calls for maybe Werner to be sacked, which I honestly think some Bremen fans wouldn't be against. I think you do have to kind of take all that into consideration. And maybe calmer heads should prevail. They'll carry on. They'll finish relatively safe in the Bundesliga. And it's another season of the bills being paid, and they can just move on from there.